Okay, I think we're ready to get started. I believe they're going to maintain their conversation over there, but we'll jump right in. Erin Dreisbach was unable to make it tonight, so I said I would pinch hit for her, and we can move through the slides and open it up for discussion or anything that we would like to kind of focus on moving into and preparing for the next committee meeting. So we'll get started. It's about 6:05. I believe we're recording this and we're good to go. So just make sure that you're using your microphone so that we can hear everybody and everybody's captured on the video recording. We'll take attendance, and we have Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Saylor,
Here.
Mr. Fountain, Rena Sadler,
Here.
Kelsey Gardner, Mr. Creedon, and myself. So, and hopefully Ms. White will be joining us, and Dr. Russell as well. So, moving through the slideshow, we just want to confirm our meeting dates for the upcoming school year. I don't think those have changed significantly. I'm sure if one of those dates is not good for the committee, we can look at what other dates might be possible to fulfill our meeting obligation. So on our next slide, I think we want to take a look at our 4 SMART goals for the year. I don't think we've whittled down our 4 SMART goals necessarily. I know that the committee typically has anywhere from 2 to 3 SMART goals. I was talking with Erin Dreisbach this previous week, and I believe that right now is the time to really hone in on what direction we want to go with these SMART goals. Are these the 4 that we want to consider? We know that Kahoot is out, so we want to eliminate that, not Kahoot. That's the game we play in the classroom. Kahoot. It's very similar, though, to Kahoot. So we know we want to update that. Not only do we not think that this committee was able to resolve some of the questions that it had regarding Kahoot, we also know that the contract was discontinued with Pennsylvania Department of Education. So we want to move forward from that and look a little bit more at these remaining SMART goals. I think it will be important for us to make a finalization of these SMART goals moving forward. We are in November now, and in order to get a really good action plan up and start kind of driving forward some of the purpose of the committee, I think it's important to identify those goals, set them, forget them, and let's move, and we can move forward then. I think, Kristen Keaveney is typically here. I believe that we are moving forward with the medical response team. We know that we're going to review the grant and the AED grant in which we have certain criteria that we need to meet. We can review how we're going to embed that criteria for that emergency or cardiac emergency response team right into some of the things that we want to accomplish with the medical emergency response team. So that seems like a natural partnership for that. Is there anybody who has any questions or concerns about our move forward with the medical response team? We're good? Okay.
I would just like to say, no, this is loud. I know there were trainings that occurred just recently on one of these in-service days, November 5th. So we had, I know at West specifically, we had at least a handful of our staff get trained, and that was on top of probably another handful that are already trained in the building.
So we talked about needing to hit a number. Do we know what that number is, and did we hit it?
So yes, and that was going to be on the next slide, or one of the next slides, but I have no problem answering that question. I believe we had 20 additional people trained on November 5th. We can double check on that exact number. I don't think we have all the signature sheets and certifications that have come through or have been processed. That number 20 gets us to the 10%. Our goal was to get 10% in each of the buildings. We have, I think West is one of the buildings that we need to have, I believe, 2 more individuals trained. We do have an upcoming training on November 25th, I believe is that Monday, the week of conferences. So we know that we have identified people in the buildings. Typically that training on November 25th is really dedicated to establishing our CPI teams. And when we establish those CPI teams, we do like to have our staff members also trained in CPR. So that fits a dual purpose. In addition, they're typically members of our staff who bill for medical assistance so that we get funding for our access funds to build in towards our access funds. So we will have hit that 10%. Our goal, which should be accomplished as of our participation list right now, we will have accomplished the 10% in each of the school buildings as well. Okay, any other questions regarding that? There will be another slide. I believe there's some additional criteria we'll review as well. The second SMART goal that the Wellness Committee was considering is the exploration of the facility dogs in schools. I think this garners a little bit more discussion, and we'll kind of jump into that on some of the following slides. We know that COOTH is out, and the fourth SMART goal that was brought to the table was enhancing district coordination with PV power packs to support families in the community facing financial insecurities. Are there any goals or any considerations for goals that we want to look at before we really stand firm on the 2 to 3 SMART goals we want to accomplish for the year?
Well, I think, okay, Don. No,
The one area that I've had a lot of, we perennially get a lot of emails and things like that, but it refers back to one of the basic concepts of this committee, and that is the bullying issues. Not so much the bullying issues of what we're doing as far as to counter them, but taking a little bit more of a look and see what are we doing in those situations that are actually the punishments or the consequences for the bullies. So many times we see the emails that come through, and it says that my child was afraid to say anything because of retaliation. Well, that is true. So what are we doing across the district towards addressing the bullies, not necessarily just addressing some of the programs that are trying to train people how not to bully?
I wanna jump onto what he's saying, but I just wanna look at this for a second. So, we're gonna be almost done the year, because the next meeting's not till January, and we're still talking about potential SMART goals for the year. And half the year is gonna be done. I'm not sure why it still mentions COOTH. COOTH is out. It's not a thing anymore. So I'm not sure why that's still a possible SMART goal for the year. It's gone, so we're not going to have that as an option. And it looks like number 1's done. Everything's been completed, right?
No, not necessarily.
Well, we haven't applied for the grant, but we're now at that 10% group that we talked about at the last month, right?
We have applied, the actual AEDs are in our possession. So now it's the next steps that we need to take. The overall goal is to establish, from my understanding, is to establish actually the medical response team. Part of the criteria that we need to complete in terms of applying for and meeting the criteria for the grant purposes is to establish a cardiac emergency response team. So that actually can be a subsection of an overall goal, or phase 1, so to speak, of an overall goal of establishing the medical response teams, which are a little bit more general.
No, I don't know. I appreciate. I'm more focused on the goals now, because we're not meeting again till January, which means half the year's gone, and so we're going to be we're moving forward with goal number 1.
Yes.
We're getting there.
Yes.
3 is out. That's out the door.
Is out.
It shouldn't even be there. Exploring facility dogs. It sounds like we're no longer, just from looking at the update, they're all interested in dogs. So now we just have to, that sounds like that's moving, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would like to replace option number 3 with a strong focus on bullying and things that we could do within the wellness committee to combat bullying inside the school district. My concerns about 4 is PV Power Packs is not a school district entity. And so I'm not sure why it's being brought up in. For the record, it's a great organization, and it does a lot of good. I do have concerns that sometimes individuals who should be relying on Montgomery County and state sometimes just go directly to Power Pack, so then they get overwhelmed. We should be reminding individuals without the school district that there are entities within Montgomery County and throughout the Commonwealth that are able to help their needs. I'm just not sure why Power Packs. It's not something that's within the school district.
Right.
And I would really like to start focusing on, maybe reducing 4 to 3 and focusing medical response teams, facility dogs, and bullying. Like that would be something we could really make some tangible goals for. But in December we should be past goals and into implementation for the rest of the year, which sounds like we are with option number 1. So the bullying issue has been an issue for years, right? Are there certain specific items that you want to focus on, or Dr. Sadler, you want to focus on in terms of the bullying? I mean, I've always had the question of why do we not take a zero tolerance approach to bullying? Subject A, bully subject B, what's the consequence? I know we've gone from hard consequences to, what's the term that's now being used?
Restorative practices.
Restorative practices, but even with restorative practices, that means someone is, there's an understanding of what they did, why it was wrong, comprehension of why that was being wrong, but, more tact to that, right? That would be where I would like to take those SMART goals for. Removing 3 and 4 and replacing it with bullying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that there have been ongoing discussions regarding Power Packs and where we're going and what is the context of that goal and what kind of does that goal mean. So just to give you a quick update, I know there's separate conversations that are occurring. Both Aaron Dreisbach and myself met with Power Packs just to kind of gain a little clarity. I know we didn't want to be dismissive about a goal coming to the table, so we wanted to make sure we were moving through all the steps to kind of get a clear understanding of what does that mean? What does it mean to necessarily, creating that partnership or possibly having the district kind of take on some of that role. So I think we've had the conversations in which we've explored that in terms of consolidating and or kind of directing people in the right direction regarding Power Packs. We've really dove into that conversation because the Power Pack shouldn't be our filter, right? We do have other resources in the community. Sometimes when our wires get crossed, we rely on what we know. So we want to make sure that we have the conversation that we have to continue to update, especially with a lot of overturn with our counselors, especially at the high school and in other areas. We want to make sure they have the correct steps to take when these issues arise. So we kind of created a small plan in which we were going to get that information out to the counselors. We want to make sure that they know where to go in order to be able to reach out to those individuals in the community. We wanted to shield Power Packs from being overwhelmed.
Yep.
So we created a way. Aaron Dreisbach will become the point person for that. The request will come through her, and then she'll be able to filter out. And we agreed. I can't recall off the top of my head what are the 3 areas that Power Packs is going to focus on, but we wanted to eliminate the counselors or other school staff members just reaching out and saying, "Hey, we have this family. How can you help?" So making it a little bit more directive, giving boundaries and criteria to kind of reach out to Power Packs and giving a point person to that so that we have that.
Shouldn't we be working with our legislatures? I mean, this is kind of the role that Representative Bradford, Sharon, and Webster would play. There are legislative monies that are out there. There are services in Montgomery County that can help with these things. We should also be using the actual organizations that are set up through the state to also help That's
Right. And I think
that's what they're there for, and there's tons of untapped funds in those groups that have it.
And I think it's important for people to be knowledgeable about those resources. And what role do we as a district take in spreading that knowledge and being able to facilitate?
I agree with what you're talking about, and I think that it is. I kind of feel like that's kind of under the purview of another area, not so much the wellness committee, but maybe under the administration or under the public relations. Add it to the things where we're getting the information out there, we're playing it up. But I don't see that as being necessarily something that comes under our purview.
You mean the enhancing the creating the district coordination with Power Packs?
Yeah, the district coordinator, if Erin is going to be doing sort of the point person and that kind of thing, that would be a good direction for her to take it. But I don't necessarily see it as being that much under what the wellness committee would be working towards.
I think we have to define what does partnership mean, and we can be
Where-
partners with many different facilities.
Yeah, but what in the policy of what the abstract of what the wellness committee is, would that fit?
I think that's the big question we had. I think that was one of the questions that we had to work through with some of these conversations that were going on over the last week or two. So we can get an update, but I think the committee agrees that we want to move away from that as a goal so that we're defining our roles clearly, and what direction do we want to go. So I like the idea of exploring the bullying that has, I think, historically over the ages, been an issue in our schools. So if I understand this correctly, we want to really dive deep into the approaches that we're taking in terms of bullying, including how do we respond to bullying, and not just from a mitigating circumstance or providing support to the individuals who are being bullied, but focusing on the individuals who are doing the bullying, and what approaches do we take when bullying occurs in our schools. Is that an accurate depiction?
Well, even developing a little bit more of an atmosphere where those that are being bullied are not so reluctant and hesitant to bring it to anybody's attention for fear of retaliation from the bully.
Okay. Does anybody else have any thoughts on that? I know, Mr. Creedon, you're knee-deep in the buildings.
Even then, I don't know if it fits under wellness.
I hear what you're saying, and I agree with the concern. I just don't know if there's an easy answer to your question. I don't think there will ever be an easy answer to your question. I think we continue to do everything we can, like you were saying. I mean, there's the proactivity, and then there's the reactivity. So I think we have taken great strides in enhancing the proactivity aspect. I know me currently at the middle level we've begun the Character Strong curriculum, and we just ended up teaching the bullying lesson, the 2-part bullying lesson at the end of October. There's some teachers right now that are in the middle of the 2-part bystander lesson that they're going through. I was co-teaching the lessons with a certain teacher as well. And some great conversations and collaborations were a result of it, which was really good. Then there's the reactivity. It's hard to think or say no tolerance policy, because bullying, the definition of bullying, I don't know if that is something that everyone has patience for, because bullying is something that is repetitive over time. One single incident, we're addressing everything. So one single incident we'll address, and there will be consequences for that type of incident. But if it's a one-time incident with a kid for the first time, we're going to address that not as bullying. We're going to address it as harassment. We're going to address it as, up to the significance of, assault sometimes, simple assault or something like that, if it's that serious. But if it's only that one time, it doesn't get into that repetitive nature. So if we've addressed it, if we've been made aware of it, like you're saying, not everybody, first of all, a lot of this happens, and those bullies are good at making it happen outside of the supervision of adults, and out of the earshot of adults. So a lot of it's happening without us even knowing. And then what we always rely on are people reporting it to us. But there's a significant trepidation to do that for obvious reasons. So that's why we want to increase. That's why we're continuing to improve and increase the proactivity aspect to get that comfort level up. I don't know if we'll ever solve that problem. No matter how comfortable or how many times I will speak to a student and tell them how much we would like to have them report and how comfortable we can try to make that process, there's always going to be, because of maybe past incidents or trauma or memories, we can't solve those types of problems. So we have to, in the way we handle it, we have to be careful. If we handle it quickly and abruptly and just go to a significant consequence and don't necessarily learn and understand a lot of the context, we could be, in disciplining somebody severely, making them more upset and what's the right word? They're gonna want to get back even more because they become that much more angry. It was your fault. It was your fault. And then all of a sudden we could be creating a situation we don't want to create. So in trying to address it, and sometimes we address it seriously, and the restorative part is not the consequence. It's in how we go about, in a way, making sure that we are carefully supporting students through within consequence. You know, when they're in detention, when they're in suspension, we're going to do some restorative strategies within those consequences. So it doesn't eliminate, it just allows us to approach it in a way where it's a more caring type atmosphere that maybe even brings certain kids together so that we can have helpful conversations that lead to restoring relationships. So again, it's a lot. It's a big topic.
Just to piggyback on one thing that you just said,
Mm-hmm.
the parent whose son is or daughter is getting bullied, if they would hear, well, we're not going to give a consequence because we think that might make the matter worse, that's a really hard pill for them to, conceptually understand and swallow, because that's not the way the system's supposed to work.
Yeah. Well, and I didn't say we wouldn't give a consequence.
I understand, but you said that sometimes giving the consequence might lead to making matters worse.
What I'm saying is that parent who might say it's bullying might not see that it's not bullying yet. Yeah. We might have given a consequence, but they weren't in agreement with the consequence because they felt it should have been something else.
Yeah.
Because we don't tell the parents consequences, but the parents know within hours what it is, given all the communication. So it's there is an education aspect. It is a good topic to make sure that we are continuing to discuss, to get our heads around, to make sure that we're doing it in a way that I think there's help. There is really good positive results to being informed and consistent in our approach. So I think that's helpful. So it would be a good thing to discuss.
Go ahead.
No, I think that, and I agree. I think that the idea of the restorative practices, I think that all of the proactive things that we're doing, I think those are good, but I also think that they need to be mixed and blended with some of the consequences of it. In other words, yes, you're going to get this consequence, but this is now we're going to speak up. We're going to talk about it. We're going to look at it. We're going to delve into exactly why it took place, but the consequence still stands.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's important that I think that to me, I think that it's you talk about a problem that's unsolvable as long as parents look at it in ways that some of the parents do, then it will never be a completely resolved issue. However, I do think that if we can create more of a culture where, even as you said, the bystanders, have someone be able to step up and speak without being afraid, or maybe even not even necessarily the person who is being bullied to be the one who steps up, but the people who see the actions taking place. Bringing more of that culture in to say, we're not going to tolerate it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've always been one that has said that school, society, everybody has rules for the 5% of the population that break them, not for the 95% that follow them. So we have to be able to get them to the point of where if the students want to get rid of the bullying, they need to step up and also help take care of getting rid of the bullying.
Yeah, no, and we don't even say bystander anymore. That term has kind of gone by the wayside. It's now upstander, because that's what we're asking them to do. Yeah. It's asking them to step up and be able to do that. So bystander is actually more of a passive term that doesn't lead to it improving. So we're that's part of the educating that we're doing, and Character Strong speaks to that terminology and terminology shift, definitely.
Yeah.
And I was going to say, I think the district has, for example, at the middle school, implemented that particular program that I think is going to help support, hopefully, children being upstanders and really not doing as much bullying and understanding the impact that it has on students and families. And, you know, we have support as well at the elementary level with that type of programming as well. I'm a little more concerned about the high school more so. What things are we going to put in place to really support the bullying at the secondary, high school level? I think middle school, you guys have the Character Strong program, which is going to support you with that, but I'm more concerned about the high school and what we can put in place, particularly at the high school.
I agree. I think that the issues at the high school they have been there for a long time. But I also think that those that are bullying at the high school didn't start at the high school. They started way back at the elementary school, grew even into the middle years, and then sort of refined their art in the high school. So I think that it is something to where it's district-wide that we need to address what is it that we're doing and how are we doing it and how are we actually reducing it. I mean, visibly reducing it.
Right, and I'm curious to see data since, you know, kids at the elementary level have been receiving lessons. I forgot what program they're using at. I think, is it, oh my God, I think they use it in my district. I can't think of the name, but I know they have Second Step, thank you. So I think they're using Second Step at elementary. Middle school is using Character Strong. So those kids that are in elementary that have been receiving this type of instruction for multiple years, I'm curious to see, do we see any trends in the data that we're seeing less bullying because the students are getting, you know, the lessons and you know, what bullying is and how to be an upstander and all that. I'm curious to see if we're going to see a decrease in bullying across the district with those cohort of kids that are going through elementary and getting those lessons and going through middle school and getting those lessons. So I'm just curious to look at that kind of longitudinal data in the future to see if we're having less bullying going on for those reasons.
How do we track that?
I know, didn't Kia do like a survey this year? She did that survey and bullying was covered in that survey.
But
I
that's
believe
feelings, that's not data.
But I believe that data is
Well, just through
the
referrals or
and-
things like
and,
that we
yeah,
do
referrals to the
track.
school. Yeah, they can
And we
track it.
report
Like
out
the
monthly.
Swiss, like
That's a data point.
the Swiss data that they
Yeah.
collect.
Yeah, Swiss
they
data.
They can use that data to track whether the instances of bullying are decreasing over an
How long
extended
has the
period of
program been in the
time.
middle school?
Oh, just started this
started.
year.
This year? And
Yeah.
the same thing with the high school, with elementary school?
No, I
don't
think
know
they've
about
been doing it
elementary.
for a while at elementary. I'm not sure
Okay.
how long.
So
At
this
least
is
a
your
couple
first year
years.
with the program at the middle school. Are you seeing any type of actionable difference or no?
I don't know if we've had enough time yet. I mean, yeah, I don't know if I can compare right now. I probably would need it maybe a couple more months. Mid-year, we might
Yeah.
start seeing some more noticeable, actionable data to weed through.
Well, what's the difference this year and last year in terms of with the program? Like, what are you doing now with the program that you weren't doing last year?
So we have our I&E period, and we're teaching Character Strong lessons on E and F days twice a cycle within that I&E period. And right now we are almost done with our 6th lesson, and that had to do with 3 lessons that were split into 2 because they were longer. So that's obvious. Last year we were piecemealing. It was counselors getting out and maybe doing a handful of lessons throughout the school year. So it is significantly more this year. I mean, we probably delivered just as many lessons this year than we have done in entire years in the past. So
Not even December. Yeah, that's good.
yeah.
Do you have any indication at this point as to how the kids are receiving it? In other words, what are they getting out of it? Are they enjoying it? Are they listening? Are they focused?
Yeah, I think part of it is establishing a connection So the beginning part of the Character Strong curriculum was establishing ground rules, doing some things together to try to establish a little bit of empathy, because there's this significant part to empathy being a reason why students, don't go to the levels of bullying, because when they learn and understand more about each other, they're less likely, they're more to empath, and when you're able to empathize, you're not as willing to say, like, I'm going to be mean towards you. Now, that's not all kids. We obviously have the kids that are not taking it seriously, and what we've done, I know we're assisting at the 8th grade level. For students who aren't taking it seriously, we've actually formed groups of 2 amongst the counselor and the administration, and we are giving, they now get to have the lessons taught to them in small groups in more of the office area, and so they're still getting the lessons, but they're getting a lot more personal attention in that regard. And then depending on how well they do in that type of instruction, they can maybe go back to those larger groups if they're going to take it seriously. So
I think, so to your point and to your point with data and your concern about bullying, maybe one of the SMART goals would be having quarterly updates on the 2 programs, on Character Strong and Second Step. Is that what it is? Second Step in elementary school, and then taking that information on how that success point. I mean, now you're talking, you're going to need to wait 2 or 3 years to see how that points in from the movement level, right? But what implementation can happen at the high school level today? Mm-hmm. Because you're talking about a 4-year cycle, or 3 years, or 4-year cycle. Actually, it would be a 5-year cycle to get everyone weeded out and in before they all in that same program. Because the students in middle school are going to have this program for 3 straight years, right? And so that's a big cycle through. So maybe getting quarterly updates on how those programs are working in elementary school and in mid school maybe are safe to say, because there's some bullying data, and safe to say maybe that is decreasing comparable to where it was last year. But to Dr. Sadler's point, what do we do today for the high school? And how can we, without creating a secondary schedule or finding another program, is there anything that we can learn from what's happening in elementary school and middle school? I mean, there's not much you can learn from elementary school. The personalities are different, but how it could help the high schools with the issues that they have today.
I agree, and
maybe not to interrupt, but are any of these programs online, like the curriculum? Maybe it is part of detention in the high school is watching one of these programs and doing a little book report on the program and giving it back to the teacher if you're in detention for doing something you shouldn't be doing because you were not empathetic or bullying somebody. It's instead of just detention being detention, it's, hey, watch one of these programs that we're giving to the middle school students and see if it, anything connects, if 1 + 1 goes off.
Yeah, and I know just a couple quick things. One is, I know the high school I think they're in conversations about PBIS and how that might look at the high school level. Mm-hmm. So I think there's part of that kind of, in a way, incorporates a student leadership group. I mean, I think high school topics like these go so much better when you have upperclassmen student leaders really leading the charge, because they are at a place where they can do that and have the responsibility of doing that themselves, where at the middle level, even the oldest kids at the middle level still need guidance, where if there's a good core group that student group at a high school level that can really lead a charge like this, it could really impact the building. So just little things that I think about when it comes to the high school level and the effectiveness, trying to be efficient and effective.
right. PBIS can be really difficult at a high school level. It can be, because it just looks different. It feels different. Your students respond differently to it. So I think it's a worthy conversation. I don't know if it fits under a larger umbrella in terms of, when you're looking at health and wellness as a committee, you're looking at really the health of a student community, assessing those student needs within that community, like what's going on in our culture. Bullying is one of those issues that are going on. assessing those needs and then developing a plan to address those needs. Being informed in that process too. I really like the idea of getting the data from the Swiss referrals, from the Swiss data, the referrals, safe to say. Let's give ourselves a starting point because we know that wave's going to take a couple years to come through. And we don't want to just sit idly by at the high school level and kind of wait for it. Let's wait for the impact of Character Strong. What possible more proactive ways can we start to address that and create a different culture, start to swing that culture? Some of it is educational. We can look at things like, it just looks different. Social media, digital citizenship. Sometimes we expect our students to know how to behave as we're becoming adults, and we're missing some key aspects of embedded instructional opportunities or educational opportunities. Maybe it's exploring different electives that are going to help build a healthier community for our students who are transitioning up to the high school. So I think there's a lot of different discussion points there.
And I'm just going real quickly before we move to another topic at a lesson where we ended up speaking specifically to students about the reporting aspect of it. It goes, not only does it define, but the whole second half of the lesson talked about, it was specific to reporting, and then students got to have conversations about what makes you not want to report. What are the anxieties? What are the stresses? What are the fears? And they ended up having great conversations about that. And it was good. If you're ready to report after considering this, they had a statement on a slide where they all looked at it and discussed it. Find a trusted adult, tell them what's happening, bring evidence you have. If you don't feel comfortable, you can still take an action. Here's what you can do. So I'm reading right from a slide that spoke to specifically about these things that you were speaking of. So all these things, it's really the first time that we've gotten this in depth with the topic. So you're right. Like, it will take some time to see that play out, but we're going in a really good direction. So.
Okay. Anybody else? Any feedback? I think it's a good direction to go for a goal. We'll tweak a little bit the wording, and we'll get that out as soon as possible. Okay, we'll get some feedback on that. Okay. All right, regressing a little bit here and going back to those grant requirements, here are some of the steps that will need to be taken in terms of the minimum of 10% of the building staff to be trained in CPR. So she lists out the different certifications that are acceptable. It needs to be completed by January 31st. And then we must include these 2 CERT drills, and it needs to occur across the buildings. There are some guidance places that we can go in terms of, like, how is this going to look? How is this going to roll out in our building? So I think we want to develop a plan that we're going to bring in some of these different entities, such as Project Adam, or other templates, to kind of come in and create that safety plan. So that should all be part of the action plan to meet the requirements of this grant. And then by meeting these requirements of the grant, that's actually going to naturally fall under the umbrella of the more general medical emergency response team. So that medical emergency response team might occur over 2 years, really focusing on the requirements here as well as that cardiac emergency response team. Once we're really good at that heart health and that heart emergency response team, we can just expand into the medical emergency response team. Okay. We already went over the data regarding where we're at in terms of that 10%. The district will partner with CHOP to become that heart health or that heart safe school. So again, we're going to lean into Project Adam and some of the entities that are already have this established and up and running in order to fully meet all of those requirements. Any questions? And it looks like Ms. Dreisbach has the goal to be completed by May 30th. Kuth, we don't need to move into. And I think we can just kind of generate a little bit of discussion about facility dogs here. It sounds like when we're looking at the data and the responses, this seems to be a really general survey to kind of get a broad feeling or a broad stroke about how do we feel in general about a facility dog and bringing the facility dog. there's a big gap though when you look at what our feelings are in terms of wanting to do something versus actually carrying out action steps to do something, and where do those action steps reside and who's in charge of kind of creating those action steps. So I think that's really the important work that needs to be established so that we're creating that action plan. I think most of the buildings are interested in fulfilling that the facility dog. There's a lot of questions though that remain. Okay, so we know you're interested. We know you might have funds. So I think that our work that we need to do to be able to bring to the committee next is to say, okay, how do we want this to look? If they're interested, how do we want to bring that to fruition, so to speak, through the steps that a school might need to take in order to fulfill meeting the facility dog steps or requirements, because it's a pretty lengthy process.
But didn't we do this already? Like, what, did we just duplicate what we just did?
Through
Well,
West,
actually,
yes.
Yeah, through
mhm.
West, Carla had done such a phenomenal job putting everything
Mm-hmm.
together. So I think that we've got a lot of the groundwork as far
Absolutely.
as who we would connect with and how.
Mm-hmm.
It's more a matter of deciding how we want to move forward with it, it would seem.
Or
I
the
mean,
who.
What building, where.
Well, that's the big thing. Is there someone in each building who wants to take ownership?
The who and of course it's how are we going to pay for it? Who's going to be responsible to pay for it?
Well, the school board paid for it for West. Am I right? That didn't come out of your budget.
Well, I mean,
I think
it's all our
fundraising?
money, I guess, but
It's all our money.
it did come out of our budget, and the foundation is currently fundraising to replenish funds, some of the
Okay.
funds, but it all depends on how the fundraising goes.
How much is a dog costing West each year?
It was an upfront cost of a little over 7,000
Yeah.
to upfront do the upfront costs,
and I
and
thought
then
that's what the board paid for, right? The board
we
approved
yeah
that.
yep, pretty much, and then we have been paying. I mean, I think the most significant bill were a couple vet bills at the very end of the summer,
Yep.
which were probably around close to $700.
Mm-hmm.
But then other than that, it's just a lot of other supply costs and
Yeah.
things like that for the dog.
Did
so
you get pet insurance?
I think there's. I don't know. I wasn't aware. I feel like there is. I just don't know. I don't have my hands on the
I mean,
technicalities of it.
I could just speak for myself as
Mm-hmm.
one board member, and there's not quorum in the room. We're when a $120 million budget. I think what it would cost to have a budgetary item to have facility dogs in each building is minuscule, and if we had to cut something out to replace that, it's such a small number. I think the results though impact the impact of the facility dog is not measurable,
Right.
and that it would be if there is a human being in each building that is able to commit to the life cycle of the service dog, it would. To me, I would advocate as strongly as I can that the school board should make this a full-time budget item, and if we have to figure out what to cut out to bring in, that's perfectly fine. I couldn't imagine that the total cost for 7 dogs, or seven dogs, would be more than $100,000 a year in a total budget. I think that would be an astronomically high number, and we could, yeah, that would be a very high number. And I think we could easily replace $100,000 or something else with this, because this touches every single teacher, every single individual that is in the building. It touches the students. It makes everyone. There's the successful impact of the service dog is a data point that's not on a scale that anyone can measure, and the monetary number is so minuscule that we should be able to say this really isn't needed. We'll replace this with service dogs because it makes that big of an impact.
Yeah. Yeah, no, a lot of that I certainly agree with. We're trying to document as much as we can when there are real great opportunities the dog has to support a child and even a staff member. We had there was a recent passing of a paraprofessional in one of our elementary buildings, and we were able to have the dog. We were able to take the dog over to the elementary school and provide as additional support in that space, which was really a great thing and an opportunity that was necessary for it to be had. So Little like times like that, I could go on and talk about the great things that are happening, but it's hard, like you said, it's hard to really, list
Yeah.
necessarily and find and put numbers to. But it's impacting kids who have traditionally in the past have had attendance problems, who are now placed in roles of helping with the dog that show up every day. It's impacting in areas where we even had a situation at West earlier in the year where there was a threat that wasn't accurate,
Yeah.
but it created some fear amongst the kids, and the dog was probably helping support handfuls of kids that were coming down to the office that were upset that day. So and that's just little impacts that are continuing to happen each and every day. He's kind of like more of he's more popular than any of us anymore. So we have, when we're in a meeting and the dog's in the room because the handler's in there, we have kids that want to come in and give the dog a present and a picture and all these little things that impact, that help make their days and do things, little things like that are students that have traditionally might have not be as social as others, but they find connection with the dog in ways that really make their days. So yeah, like you said, it is just, and we've only had them now for a few months, so there's a long way to go, and there's a lot of impact that is being had. But it does come with a lot of organization. I'm glad we're going through this year so that we can certainly make sure that any other school that's going to come alongside is ready, because we're going through something now where his handler, our MTSS facilitator, Jen Moylan, she's at a conference for 3 days. So there has to be a secondary handler that takes the dog home, and that person has the dog now for last night, tonight, and tomorrow night. So that happens, and then the other people have to step in and be with the dog throughout the day because the handler's not there. Yeah. So all these other responsibilities come into play, and it has to be all well organized and understood before any dog comes on.
Yeah, and I think that's where I wanted to move to in terms of, okay, what are our next steps? Like, we need to kind of establish.
That was one of the things that I was about to say, because when it comes to the facility dogs, in many ways, all your comments are kind of like preaching to the choir on that one, because I am a 1,000% behind the whole program. But I'm wondering if is there a way that we could identify in each building a person who would then be able to be the point person to work in a committee, possibly with Carla, since Carla has already been through the process.
Yeah.
One or two people, whichever. Two people? Yeah, 2 people per building. Well, this would be the ones to be able to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, we can have them come and shadow. They should probably be coming over to walk through days and things like that we need to establish some type of procedure for, and getting them up, trained and on board.
If the building's prepared to put together a 10-year life cycle plan for a facility dog, I don't think there should be a monetary question that gets in the way of how we're going to make it happen. It should be about, we'll cut something to make this happen. That's most important.
Yeah, I think we focus on how do we get what's in Carla's brain as far as that experience goes and everything she went through, because it was over 2 years, I believe. How do we get that into an edible form to be able to give it to the building so that they really have a firm understanding of what that commitment is, the exact next steps. I love the idea of a committee with maybe Carla to actually walk people through the process and kind of prepare them.
I'm sure they would be completely on board with that.
Okay, I think we have some great
If Carla's
ideas.
watching, thank you.
It's actually her birthday today, so
Happy birthday,
Happy
Carla.
she's
birthday,
probably
Carla.
celebrating.
With the
don't know.
dog?
Is she the second?
No,
back-
she
is the backup
one of
person?
our English teachers has the dog, so
Got it.
she's not necessarily the
Right.
second handler.
Carla's at the conference. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'll work with Aaron Dreisbach, draft some plans. I think it's going to be really important to memorialize that information that Carla has so that we can get it out so buildings can start to prepare and kind of create that plan, so to speak. And again, I like the idea of the committee. I wanted to jot that down. That's a great way to do it.
And I think in some ways too, it could be, I mean, a building by building choice. If some buildings are ready to move forward right now, then let them go ahead and start being on a committee towards that. If others are lagging a little bit behind, well, they can jump on
Yeah,
board
they
when
can
they
wait.
get to
Yeah.
it.
I think the last thing we want to do is like become a Sarah McLachlan commercial where we took too hasty of steps and then people are like, oh my gosh, I'm not ready, you know, and we're going to put a dog up for adoption. So we want to like front load everything like really well, I think.
I would agree. Yeah, this is not something you can go too quickly with, or else if it goes awry, and I've heard some stories in other schools where things, if it's not handled correctly, the dog's not even handled correctly, something happens that leads to the dog becoming traumatized, or obviously situations in the school leading to others becoming traumatized, and then the dog has to go back, and then you start all over from scratch again. So we're taking it is a. I mean, I'm even asking questions like, why don't you just leave him off the leash in the office? No. What do you do? Have to have him on the leash the whole time. And it's a much slower process than I even anticipated. Like there's a lot of, we hear the dog barking every so often because there are just and this is something we can't control. There are certain people that trigger him and we're not sure why. So we'll hear the barking every so often, just like today. And he's also not been himself today or yesterday because of his handler being at the conference. So he looks depressed, and we're trying to figure all that out. But yeah, didn't nap. Like was sitting there just waiting for all those types of things that you just you're not in control of, and you're just trying to learn through the process. So.
Okay. All right. I think we have some solid next steps. Anything else we want to bring to the table? I think we have about 5 minutes for Kelsey to give us a quick update on food services.
Okay. Just a couple food service updates. We did start an Instagram account. Everyone follow us. That would be great. We continue to do taste tests. I know that there is a push to do more taste tests. We've really only done them at the high school level so far. It's just a little bit easier for us to do them there, just food allergy, along the lines of food allergies and the timing of all of the lunches and all of that. But we are hoping to take what we have learned at the high school food-wise and what the high school kids are liking and bring it down to potentially middle and elementary schools. If not this year, definitely next year. I have a whole booklet of items that I'm considering especially for next year, once our audit is over. Those are some pictures there of Halloween meal at elementary schools. Our staff really gets into Halloween. They did those really cool pudding cups for the kids too. Composting. We are considering starting composting with some of our vegetable scraps from the kitchens at specifically just at East right now, but I have reached out to the garden at Skipback to see if once we do have this beautiful compost, if it will be able to be used at the Skipback garden. So we're trying to do a little bit of composting. I know that there is a lot of waste in kitchens in general throughout the country, but we're trying to limit that as best we can right now with kitchen scraps, and then kind of maybe potentially look to expand it a little bit along the road. All right, next one, thank you. The triennial assessment. The triennial assessment we do every 3 years. It is something that all school districts in the country have to do if they are part of the National School Lunch Program. It pretty much measures the implementation of the local school wellness policy. And the local school wellness policy started back when Michelle Obama in 2010 did the Healthy Free Hunger Free Kids Act. So that's really when it first started. And now we are mandated to look at our wellness policy and to see if we need to make any changes with it. And the first part of that is by doing a triennial assessment. So we will be doing that. I believe I will be probably sending it out with the help of Aaron, probably, and Joan, to the principals starting in February. And it pretty much just asks the principals and their teams over there, nurses, the phys ed teachers, anybody who teaches nutrition at any of the schools, to evaluate how we're doing based on nutrition education for the kids, physical activity, physical education, food and beverages that we have at the school. So that's pretty much what the wellness policy is all about. There really isn't anything in there talking about mental health or anything like that with kids. So it's really nutrition education, physical activity, and foods and beverages while the kids are in school. So we'll be doing that. I'll be gathering together all of the data, presenting it to everybody probably in April or May, and then next school year is when we will look at it, form committees, and decide if we need to change anything in terms of the wellness policy itself. So that's kind of, where we're going with it. So stay tuned for January, February, when we'll send that out to principals, and we'll ask them to have that back to us probably like April, end of April.
A quick question. Were we affected at all by Kraft pulling out of
No.
the products?
No.
No? Okay.
We were not using their products. Yeah, good question. The Lunchables you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we weren't using those.
Okay.
Definitely not. Yeah. Any other questions at all?
Okay. Anybody else have any items they'd like to bring to the table?
I just wanted to piggyback on one of the things that she said, because the onus of the wellness committee is supposed to also be about the wellness of the students, and we don't really dive into that very much in terms of their physical fitness. I know it's something I talked about when I first joined the board and board leadership, about having wellness dive more back into physical fitness. Obviously, we were still in a COVID world at that time, but I would like to see some conversations about school physical fitness and student physical fitness. In terms of what we're doing with our student body, specifically in elementary school and middle school, in terms of the mile test, push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, rope climbs, and those items that happened back in the day for schools. It's old school. I understand that. And there, if we could get back some form of process into monitoring and establishing a baseline where we think our students should be, communicating with parents on where their students are, and maybe helping with that aspect. It is the onus of what the wellness committee is that we don't normally touch on, and I would like to see if we can figure out a way to get back to that. I do like the fact that we're putting in more nutritional food into the bellies of the students, but would like to focus more on, are we able to create some baselines for parents to see, this is where your child is on the mile, this is where your child is on the pull-up, this is where your child is on those normal baselines that are out there, to help them facilitate growth in their child.
Okay. So just as a quick summary, just conversations in general, more about our school physical fitness, what's currently happening, particularly in our elementary and middle school buildings, in terms of what does physical fitness looks like, how are we, fostering that and facilitating that, and then moving through conversations regarding monitoring and communicating out that progress and how we're addressing that physical fitness.
I don't want to have conversations about what gym class looks like. But
Right.
I want to get back and creating baselines for students.
Okay. Okay.
I know everyone hated doing how many pull-ups can you do? Yeah.
Yeah. I'd just be curious to see what we are doing right now.
Yeah.
Does that look drastically different than what we did when we were kids, right?
Oh, it looks.
I can answer that. Yes.
Yeah. Right. Yes. And it's a negative. Yeah.
We're playing frisbee golf and pickleball and doing a lot of those. I mean, there's also some lessons as far as the mile. They're still doing the mile. They do some things on making sure they're checking their pulse and know and understand what different levels of their pulse means
Is the
and what
mile
they need to know.
mandatory?
Yes. I've been told yes.
And they're
Well, I think
again, whether it's I'm trying to think on whether they have options as far as how they can complete it.
Yeah, they do. It's not mandatory. They can walk.
Oh.
Yeah.
So was it, What's the difference?
The purpose of the mile test was, in the past, was to create a baseline of where your student is comparable where they should be at their age. So someone walking a mile shouldn't take 18 minutes to, to do. It
Oh,
was
gotcha.
to create a baseline.
Oh, okay. But completing it is mandatory,
I would have
though.
to get clarity, but
Right.
they do it, and it's, I don't know if there's still, I think there's still opportunity for, not necessarily running the whole thing,
Yeah.
but just completing or getting to a certain point.
Yeah, if we could just look at what that looks like now, and maybe we could figure out ways to get it back to what it used to be.
Okay, it's on the list. One or two more items, just overall in general, an update regarding the foundation, some of the projects we're working on. PV Woods dedicated their first storybook trail at Muhlenberg Woods on November 9th. So that was an exciting event. Ooh, there was a slide taken out. I believe. I know. There is the Arboretum update. So I believe that was just postponed until March.
Or yes, it was. And then I think Dr. Clooney's going to speak at the Safety and Ops this
Perfect.
week. Or next week, excuse me, Thursday.
Okay, so that's good. All right. Any questions? We're good to go. We have a lot on our plate. We had a lot of good discussion tonight, and Aaron and I will follow up, and we'll get some of these. We'll start chewing on the meat of these ideas. So, all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan.
Good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started with the Education Committee of the Whole. So moving forward, here are our agenda items for tonight. We'll featuring like it's a theater. Dr. Zach Fuller is going to go take us through our program planning guide updates for next year. Then Natalie will take us through the middle level ELA pilot. I'll talk some about the grief sensitive schools training that we experience and the grant that comes along with that. And then Mr. Handerhan will take us through the update on the science pilot for TWIG. So I will start driving and you can tell me what to do as I drive. Yes.
Okay, cool, all right. So we made some edits to the program planning guide this year that we're seeking approval on. I'll take you through those category by category here. Course removals, industrial technology is a course that hasn't run in 9 years. We haven't had the numbers of students to run industrial technology, and a lot of the content has been absorbed into other courses. So our proposal has been to remove industrial technology, precision machining and 3D printing, I'm sorry, and then absorb that content into other courses. We are absorbing that content into other courses. We have just bought a $30,000 laser, as you know, a laser engraver that it arrived just the other day and is operational in our industrial technology department, as well as 3D printers for our other courses. So it's not like the content is going away. It's being moved to other courses. And then Principles of Engineering is a Project Lead the Way course. My understanding is that we are in the middle of a curriculum revision that phases out our Project Lead the Way courses, grade by grade. And so this is a 10th grade course. We will be phasing out Project Lead the Way and replacing them with our own homegrown courses, which I can talk about in just a second. And so Principles of Engineering would be coming out of the guide, and it'll be replaced by Engineering Principles A, Energy and Transportation.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So I know the 3D printings are actively used in the school. Is there anything that is or was taught in industrial technology that's not being taught in those subsequent classes that are using the machines?
Well, Matt Storm has told me that most of the content has been moved over. I don't have what hasn't been, but I can find that for you.
Okay.
Okay. The content that hasn't been moved over, I will find for you.
And is that still an elective that's offered right now? Do we just have not enough students? Are those students then shifted into the courses that currently offer these programs?
Yeah, so the way that program planning works is that students can request this course, but say we only have 3 or 4 students that want to take it. Those students can post alternates to that course within their program planning, and so as they choose alternates in order to fill.
Yeah, what I'm trying to, I think I'm asking my question incorrectly. This course with the precision machining and 3D printing is offered somewhere else. Why is a student wanting industrial technology over those other courses, or do they not know that it's offered somewhere else? Like, is there a reason why this course doesn't get many active students? Is because we're already offering it somewhere else? I'm trying to see where the lapse is.
Because the content has been absorbed into other
Correct.
places.
Yeah.
My sense of that, Jason, and I'll Mr. Saylor, and I will find out for you, is that that those machines, so these are all taught in the same room, and that those machines are all present in that room, and so they are utilized by all of our industrial technology courses. And so I don't think that students are taking other courses in order to replace precision machining and 3D printing with those other courses. I think it truly is a matter of student interest. That's just a guess, though. I can ask that question for you. And then this is a name change only, from manufacturing and construction to construction technology. Part of what I see as my mandate as I continuously look at this program planning guide over the course of the next few years is to try and create flexibility within our prerequisites to allow students into classes as much as we can. So right now in our Spanish curriculum, we have an honors program and a college prep program. And the way that the curriculum is designed, it's broad. The honors curriculum is much broader. It covers more content than the prep curriculum. And so by the end of the year, our honors students are further along than our prep students. What that's doing is, in effect, blocking kids from making the leap from prep and into honors, because they wouldn't be starting in the same place as they picked up an honors course the following year. Those courses wouldn't dovetail in the way that they would need to for students to get into the course. That's going to require a curriculum revision to change in a wholesale way. And it is the case with our French courses now, so there's a bit of an inconsistency. So our first step into letting our students move from prep into honors is to allow our teachers to identify students who can make that leap and then make that recommendation and support that leap. So I've had a conversation already with our department coordinator about we need to find a way to support students in making that leap from prep to honors if that's what they want to do, and then allow them to do it in the curriculum guide simply by changing that word "and" to the word "or," so that they can have taken Spanish honors or have a teacher recommendation that allows them to make the leap. So that's the reason for this change. There are other changes in this vein that I'll be pursuing over the course of the next couple of years. Looking to identify areas where we can identify areas where it makes sense for students to leap from prep to honors,
Yeah.
right, and to challenge themselves with a more rigorous curriculum.
I just have a quick question. I couldn't find, we did some of this last year. I think last year we went from the or operator to the and operator, not for Spanish, but for some other courses. Are we re-looking at those decisions that were made? Now that Dr. Fuller's here, just to kind of see if we think that's the right scope. I couldn't find the courses. I forgot. I couldn't find the meeting that we did it, but
I remember that.
yeah.
I don't remember it going to the end. I thought that the whole purpose of the revisions were to remove the barriers associated with.
We just
That's
didn't
how
do
I
it for
remember the
we just didn't do
conversation.
it for these then?
I don't know the answer to that part, but I thought that the purpose of the revisions last year were to remove some barriers to allow the microphones are like extra tonight, aren't they? I thought that the purpose of it was to remove some barriers to allow students more flexibility and maybe have access to more rigorous
Yeah.
coursework.
Yeah, if I remember right, I don't think the discussion was global in nature. It was only related to the courses that were being reviewed at that time.
Yeah.
I mean, could we in theory look at it globally? We probably could. I don't have it.
I think Mr. Saylor's specific question is whether or not they should be revisited if we made the opposite change, and this is the recommendation this year.
Correct.
I think that's a legitimate ask, but my takeaway from that conversation, as I remember it, was I don't remember so much about the language, but I remember the purpose of the conversation was to remove barriers. So the end would add a barrier, but the or opens a barrier. So.
I pulled up the document from last December, and just some examples. I think I would agree with what Ms. White is saying, and I know that there are times when Dr. Moss wanted to do things in phases and not necessarily everything all at once, but revised from, for example, honors or systems, revised from current completion of geometry to no prerequisites required, or revised from strong recommendation for completion of geometry and teacher recommendation, freshmen will need to meet additional criteria based on a rubric, to no prerequisites required, however geometry is recommended. Successful completion of Algebra 2 to completion of or concurrent enrollment in Algebra 2. So we'd have to look through it more carefully, but I think we tried to avoid that.
Okay.
My understanding was that had been the ongoing conversation, and so I tried to take another step down that road
Yeah.
with this.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
just as another point on that, correct me if I'm wrong, even if it wasn't the or recommendation, let's say it was for another course, a motivated student could ask for an exception to the prerequisites and would typically be granted.
We do have a waiver, yes.
Yeah, great.
So what got us looking at that was a particular student whose schedule didn't allow for Honors Spanish 2, but has already stated a desire to take Honors Spanish 3 next year. And so our question was, is that allowed under our current prerequisites? And that's what got us looking at those prerequisites carefully. And then recognizing that there is an inconsistency across our 2 languages. Yeah. Lifeguarding, that would be a 0.5 gym credit and a pathway to our Act 158 pathways requirement. Students will end this course with a certification. If you take this course in community ed or out in the community, it costs hundreds of dollars. I know because I did it. And here it will cost 12, the cost of certification. So students, it's offered 10 through 12 because students must be 15 to take the course. The next 2 courses are additions in the art department, which are, they'll be printmaking and AP art history. The goal was to create higher level art courses and to offer them at a 0 sum. I'm not asking to add art teachers. I am asking to gauge student interest in printmaking and art history because that's been expressed to our art teachers. So they said, let us write curriculum, let us offer these courses as a part of our course offerings and use that to gauge student interest. The problem with gauging student interest ahead of the scheduling season is that when we survey students, we tend to get numbers that are not, I've done this before, right? We tend to get numbers that are not accurate because when we survey students and say, would you like to take art history? They say, yeah, sure, right? But if they're weighing that within a larger schedule, sometimes they make a different choice. When they're looking at everything they want to take, they might forego art history. So usually the best way to gauge this is to offer it within our course offerings and see how many students want to take it within our simple tally. So we're hoping to put those within our course offerings this year. Questions about that? AP African American Studies came out of a series of meetings that Dr. Champagne Lee had with some of our students last year. We had offered the Black History course. We had students not taking it, and so we were trying to find out why. And our students were telling us that it was because the weight of the course was not there for the transcript. We looked at maybe offering this at the honors level, and if we did that, we wanted to do a dual enrollment with the University of Pittsburgh. But their course is Black History Reconstruction to Present. And so when you talk to the representatives from Pittsburgh, you know, they say it's Reconstruction to Present, and that leaves out the all that prehistory prior to Reconstruction. So we felt like the AP African American Studies course offers sort of a broader picture of Black history.
I have a question about
Sure.
that. So 10 through 12, was there any discussion, given the fact that the co-enrollment class would pick up kind of maybe, this would be like a prerequisite to that.
Mm-hmm.
If someone were to take this in 10th grade or even 11th grade, was there any discussion about a co-enrollment opportunity to further learning after this class?
So what we talked about with Pittsburgh was possibly a co-enrollment opportunity concurrent with the class. So if you take you would take this AP curriculum and then you would eventually get to Reconstruction.
Yeah, I guess
and
that's
take
my
it to
point,
present,
is to kind of pick up
right?
where you, right.
And so their question is, it's supposed to be a year-long offering, right? And so like
Maybe
we're
it would be too much
still
rigor to
having a
read.
conversation
Yeah,
about that.
right.
Part of what we're doing in the guide is adding the University of Pittsburgh as a possible dual enrollment offering, because we're still sort of having that conversation with them. And if it comes to fruition, then we're happy to offer it.
Okay, yeah, I would imagine that, then what's after this, if you take this as a 10th grader or an 11th grader and you want to continue down this path,
Right,
what would be next. This would be the top if there's no co-enrollment.
right, it would be. This is that replacement of Project Lead the Way course, right? So we replaced the Project Lead the Way course in 9th grade last year, and are replacing the Project Lead the Way course in 10th grade this year with Engineering Principles A, Engineering and Transportation Honors. I understand that that was a broader decision in our revision of our STEM curriculum. So this was anticipated.
How come this wouldn't be offered to 9th graders?
Pardon me?
How come this wouldn't be offered to 9th graders?
Because there's a prerequisite course for this.
Okay.
There's the replacement we did for the Project Lead the Way course in 9th grade.
Okay.
Sorry. Other general things, the first page of the guide is now going to include me instead of Dr. Moss, and all of the staffing changes that have happened at the high school. I will be in the video. And we also have revised our NMTCC pages per their revisions of their curriculum. We just took that wholesale and made those changes. But that includes the addition of the Allied Health Program for seniors, and then you can see the two blurbs that they revised. We revised those blurbs within the guide. Addition of the University of Pittsburgh.
I have one question about the
Sure.
dual unit, because I know that we talked about it last month as well. So does that mean if there is a student that's interested in dual enrollment courses, will they be pre-selected courses for dual enrollment, or will it be whatever is available?
Pre-selected courses for dual
Okay.
enrollment.
Is there a list getting developed, or is this,
So Pittsburgh has a list of courses.
okay,
And so we're still doing the work of figuring out where that list intersects with what we offer.
okay,
One of the things I like about the University of Pittsburgh offerings, they call it college and high school. And our teachers get training from the university professors who offer those courses at Pitt once a year, either virtual or in person, which I think is great. And I also like that this is state credit that is offered rather than, sort of general credit. Like an AP course might be, or community college credit. This is state university credit. It's also cheaper.
yeah, to me, I really am a very big supporter of this. I think that it will do great things to benefit kids that maybe would not necessarily, maybe they're not on a college path, or they don't think that they are going to be.
Right.
If they can accumulate college credits in high school, then maybe that opens a door for them down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we would also not encounter, even our Montgomery County Community College dual enrollment courses have quotas for the number of students that must be dual enrolled. We encountered this problem this year, and they will cancel dual enrollment for the entire section if those quotas aren't met.
Wow,
Which is
okay.
not the case here.
Okay, yeah, this is great. I can't wait to see the list of offering. That's awesome.
We include language permitting students to test out of the swimming requirement in PE courses. The current plan is this. We'll allow current 8th graders will pick a day when students will be bussed over, or multiple days when students will be bussed over at the end of the year, to test out of swimming according to a rubric that'll be developed by our PE teachers. And then, once we have the numbers of students who have tested out of swimming, we will create swimming sections of PE and non-swimming sections of PE, so that students won't have to leave their PE class to go someplace else when the swimming unit happens. We will simply program a course, sections of the course that do not have swimming, and those students will do something else besides swimming. The goal here is that, if we're going to allow students to test out of swimming if they can already swim and can demonstrate that they can already swim.
Be it like a deep water test type of thing from like a community pool philosophy. I can't swim, so
Right.
I
Yeah, consider the test that you would need to take to jump
Oh,
off
on
the diving board.
diving board. Okay.
Right.
That-
Demonstrate that you can swim, tread water. Yeah.
And so that would be the plan for this year's 8th graders?
This year's 8th graders and this year's 9th graders, because we do swimming in 9th and 10th grade. We have a swimming unit in
Okay.
both of those grades.
Okay, so then what is the timeline then for that to happen? Or you're still working on
That will
it?
happen in the spring.
In the spring, okay,
Yep.
gotcha. So then I
Would they
guess,
For the following school year.
for the following school year.
Right, these are revisions are for the upcoming school year.
That part I
25,
understand.
26.
But I guess my question really is around the kids that are already on the track of the swimming. Like say they're in 10th grade
Right,
and then the spring comes, but they haven't had swimming. Like
right.
there's going to be a,
This is a next year revision.
Yeah.
We have
I
had,
understand.
we do have in place some ability to do this now, but it's very situationally dependent.
okay. All right, and then the test out will be administered by
Our PE teachers
PE teachers
in our pool.
in the pool. I'm sorry, after hours? There's no bullet points. I'm so sorry. I have so many questions.
No, you're right. You're right. So no, it would be during this. We would provide this opportunity during the school day.
Okay.
Coordinate with the middle school to provide
Okay.
this opportunity during the school day.
Okay.
During probably March when program planning happens.
Okay.
So that we would have that information going into scheduling.
Okay, because then obviously to get 2 buildings of 8th graders here, I'm assuming they have to sign up for, it would be maybe during their gym period
Yeah,
or something
I would like
that.
to test out, and then we'll bust them out.
Correct. And then like same goes like during this week of gym class, if you're interested in testing out, this is what you have to do. You show up and you do X, Y, Z. And,
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
got it.
There's been some discussion of, there are some students who can swim and also have anxiety about being, in a bathing suit in front of their peers. And so we were also going to offer a more private test out situation for students who wanted to test out but didn't want to do it with a group.
Situationally.
Situation.
Okay, so it'll be like almost like a audition,
Sure. Yeah.
lack of a better
Yeah.
analogy.
Yeah. Come in and
A swimming
do
audition.
your thing and then leave.
And sing while you're, okay, got it.
My question would be, is the only goal of this to have the students have reached a minimum swim test requirement?
Yes.
Okay, so there's no further swimming skills that we're trying to nurture at this point.
I mean, so when you read what the curriculum has is familiarity with all of the strokes, right? The basic strokes of swimming, and then the ability to keep oneself from drowning, right?
Understood.
Water safety, and then familiarity with the strokes of swimming.
Okay,
So that's really what we'd be looking for.
all right, thank you.
Language permitting a drop add period. So we ran into, when I got here, by far the most contentious conversations I had with families and students were around dropping courses after the permissible drop deadline, which this year was technically March 31st of the previous school year. I have some philosophical concerns about 15-year-olds who make decisions on March 31st for September, the upcoming September, not having flexibility built in to make a change. And so the goal of a drop add period would be to provide an opportunity for students to spend some time in their courses in September, and then have the flexibility to make a change, schedule permitting, without a whole lot of hoops and barriers to overcome. So we're looking at the first 6-day cycle of the school year being a very liberal drop add period that would allow students to move, if they want to move from honors to AP or AP to honors or honors to prep, if they want to drop an elective and pick up something else, or even drop for a study hall, provided that it does not drop them below the number of credits they need to remain a full-time student or raise them above the number of study halls they're allowed to have. We would allow that simply through a conversation with a counselor and a conversation with a parent, rather than a whole bunch of paperwork and all of the things that we have now that basically put barriers in your way and make it inconvenient for you to change your class. This is not what we're used to. This sparked a very lively discussion at our scheduling committee table, but we think it's the right thing to do in the end. we would not allow students, the one place that we just can't go is to allow our students to drop a class in favor of senior privilege, because once I realized that my AP government class is first period and I can't get here late, and I might want to drop it just to sleep in, and we don't want that to happen. So that would be the one hard and fast guideline that we'd have during this time. We will not exceed course caps during this time. So if you want to pick something up, but those sections are full because students requested them prior to the course request deadline in March, then you'd be out of luck. And we're not going to drop below a certain minimum threshold. We're thinking double digits because we have an obligation to use our staff in a responsible way. And once we're getting to these super small classes because everybody wants to drop or they didn't like the syllabus, then we are not using our staff efficiently. So we do have to have a balance there, but we're looking to be a little bit more flexible for kids. Questions about that?
Yes,
Okay.
6 days. I understand that that's one cycle, and you described that as a liberal policy, and compared to March, it is.
Yeah.
To me, that seems a bit short, though, for a student that has just entered into a class and is discovering that perhaps it's time to make a change on that. I have an example which you know well.
I do.
I would, would it be that much of a burden to make it, say, 3 cycles as a suggestion? Because that would get you into at least the quiz and test periods
Yeah.
to allow the student to actually evaluate whether or not this is the path that they need or want to be on. It seems that 6 days, while it's better than March, they really don't have a flavor yet of what they're doing. And I would anticipate that students that are just going to drop because of a schedule that they think it's extremely full or other reasons, they would probably do it within those 6 days, probably without an issue, because it's not, their decision isn't dependent necessarily on the course.
Right.
Would there be a major objection to, say, that time period?
6 days, 3 6-day cycles is longer than I've heard of for a drop add period.
I'm kind of comparing
we
it
would
to
have
like
the
in the
long-
college
Yeah,
situation.
that would be
you
the
have-
longer one that I've heard of.
We would be getting to the end of September. The way
No,
our
it's
school year
at the
starts.
very it's about mid-September. I counted the days.
Don't forget. Look at the not the menu. Look at the.
I know the number of holidays in between.
You don't
and
have a
things
full
like
week of school until like.
about the 3rd, 4th week of
Correct. So if you wanted to
calendar
do
week.
full 6-day schedules, you could be looking at mid-September,
Yeah,
towards the back end of mid-September, and now you're.
right. And in the example that I alluded to before, the first test that my child had was about 3.5 weeks, calendar weeks into it.
So, okay, I'm sorry, Mr. Seller.
Part of this is because I see the emails. I get emails, and I have I'm in track, and now I have to leave school, but my honors courses are at that back end. That's right. You have some honors courses that are later periods and track starting now, and you're going to miss that, and so you'll have to figure it out. You just can't say, well, I'm running track, and I want to redo my schedule. 6 days. This is always a tough scenario. I do agree that there needs to be a change system from like what somebody does in March to what happens in August. I actually think 6 days is too long. I think you should know within the 48 hours of when school starts if I need to talk and the school administrator to make a change. But getting 18 business days, 18 school days into a cycle, that's redoing schedules, new teachers, and now that student goes to another course and missed 18 days of something.
Understood.
That's a lot.
No, I understand that seems like a long period of time.
Yeah.
The only reason, besides the fact that the 6-day cycle is something, no matter what we do, it should probably be in increments of 6.
Because I would want students to sit in their course at least once.
Sure. Yeah.
prior to making a decision about, have the opportunity to sit in the course at least once prior to making a decision, which is why the 6 days.
Why do most parents who come in through in September wanting to make some changes, if you had a, you know, give me a top 2 box of the reasons, what are the top 2 reasons that somebody wants to, is it because the coursework's too hard, or is it a schedule issue?
Usually it's because the coursework is challenging in a way that students don't want to be challenged. I don't want to say that it's too hard for the student to do, but often it's the student is saying it's too much to put on my plate right now. And then the other changes which we almost always approve are students who want to challenge themselves.
Sure.
But the contentious conversations are usually about dropping a course down after the
So how would a parent know or a student know within 6 days that the course is too challenging? Is it something that comes from the syllabus, where they look at the syllabus and go, this is too challenging?
Our thought was that, you know, the introduction to the course would give most students a clue about what the challenge would look like for them and what the commitments for them would be. We're always going to, there are always going to be special circumstances, right? There are always going to be situations, and we have built into our policy, right, the ability to, we have that latitude to make those changes, and we have a scheduling committee that considers changes throughout the year. So there's always going to be special circumstances, and we're always going to try to be as flexible as we can. But at the same time, I feel a need to draw a line somewhere and say, at this point, you've made a commitment to the course. So that's the balance I'm trying to strike.
I agree with your 6-day cycle. But now my brain leads to, how do we solve the underlying issue? If the top 2 reasons are coursework's too hard or coursework's not hard enough, and that's something that comes from the syllabus, are the syllabuses able to be presented to the students in the summertime or in March when they pick these courses, where they could review the syllabus or maybe last year's syllabus and get an understanding of, I think this is going to be too much, or I think this is not going to be enough, to maybe give us some leadway into preventing these issues from happening?
This leads me to my next bullet point.
I apologize. I haven't
It's
read
okay.
that bullet point.
So the syllabus, it doesn't mention the syllabus there. I think that could be a good thing to present students with. But one of the things that I have heard from student advisories, both my student leadership advisory, which I met with last week, and also we have a group called the Women in STEM Ambassadorship here. We talked about, because I've never seen it, what does program planning look like? And what I've heard is that sometimes course recommendations for students appear in synergy for them without a conversation having happened about what do the offerings look like and why would you be recommended for one offering over another. So our goal is to create a week where we will say very publicly to students and teachers, this is course recommendation week. Right? During this week, all teachers will tell you all pathways from the class that you're in forward and what that looks like for you, and why would they make a recommendation for one class over another. That's not happening consistently right now.
How many classes do you think there are at PV?
How many classes?
Yeah.
A lot.
200?
Sure. Yeah. So it would be like if I'm in, you know, Algebra 2.
Yeah.
Right? My Algebra 2 teacher would say, well, you could take AP pre-calculus, you could take pre-calculus, you could take financial literacy, and go through all of those options, and then why you would take one over another.
Yeah, I mean, with the way technology's out there, to solve this long-term issue, short-term success plan, long-term potential solvement is maybe creating webinars that are clickable, that parents can click. You have, teachers, now there's 200 courses, that's a lot, but here's a 45-second snippet of what this course is going to entail. Student can watch the video and, hey, Mrs. Cornish is my chemistry teacher. I'm going to click on, Mrs. Cornish's video, and here is what, AP chemistry is going to look like, or George Washington in 11th grade. I watch the video and I go, yeah, that's really what I'm looking to take. Go talk to mom and dad and say, watch the video, this is really what I want, or having that syllabus there. So, that's a long-term thing that we could do with technology to make it easier for students and parents to understand what next pathways are and what's really it's going to be. It's one thing to read it or to, hey, I'm going to take this course, but to hear it vocalized by potentially that teacher, hey, this is what I'm going to be focusing on for this year. This is what your workload's going to look like. than a student, because it's tangible, they can touch it, they can feel it, they can hear it.
Yeah. One thing I noticed within our guide now, we do have links for some courses to descriptions of that course.
Yeah.
I'd love to expand that.
Yeah.
And I guess the only thing I would add with regards to a longer cycle, my main concern would really be coming into another class 3 weeks later, and now the class has moved on from their first, portion. Would be maybe some of that in that first 6 days, there can be some sort of a test barometer offered to kind of give students, I realize you have to get some content behind you before you can test, but if the test had been sooner in that instance, it would have been maybe more telling that, within the first 6 days, maybe come up with some sort of and this is where we're heading. Like, this is what my expectation is.
Right.
This is what,
Like a sample assessment.
Yeah,
Somewhere in the
mean-
first 6 days, give a sample of what a test would look like.
Right, like almost like before you take the SAT, you look what do the questions look like?
Right.
AP they have questions that are already established. Like, these are the type of questions you're expected to answer.
Yeah.
Don't sign up for it if you don't feel like you're up for the task.
Right.
Some of it's retaining knowledge and concepts, but some of it's not that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's the only reason that the number 18 was there, is because that was the first assessment in this particular case that
Right.
was there.
Which was
in
probably offering grace to the class to let them get
I'm
get their
sure-
feet wet.
yes.
But at the same time, now to leave that class, now you're entering another class 18 days behind, and you now have to catch up. So there's like a
18's
catch-22.
not the magic number,
Right.
because it's only based on the experience that I had in this one
No,
particular
I
thing.
understood that to be true,
So
but
it would be great if we moved that up, if there was an assessment that was sooner, that would allow that to either go to the 12 or back to the 6.
well, the
not an
coordination
issue.
should happen within the parameters of the drop ad period. I guess
Exactly.
is my point.
Yes, which is, I guess, the point that I was trying to make in one of my emails about it needs to be coordinated across so that the teachers understand this as well. I think ad drop is an important tool in the students' learning. It allows them to focus what their course is going to be besides in the spring.
Right.
So, and the biggest, I guess, frustration that I had with this process is that it wasn't very clear how to do this, either from a student perspective or from a parent's perspective. There wasn't a place to go to say, this is the procedure, this is how we do this. And so that's going to be the key to whatever we decide, is having that communication and that clarity that's in there so that students can evaluate and parents know how to help their children in their educational goals.
So that would have been helpful to you. Because 9th grade scheduling happens in middle school, so it's a little bit different. So, but that would have been helpful at the spring scheduling, is what you're saying, Mr. Leggett? Passing along the information as to the procedure to go through once the year starts?
Or do you mean within the
well,
process?
we have so many procedures and regulations, and we have ARs. For most situations when there's an issue, you can find in the handbook or somewhere, how do I do this? Do I submit this form? Who do I go to? Now, here, who do I go to is pretty obvious. But there's nothing there to say this is how this procedure is to be expected. So if we make a decision on 6 days, there should be somewhere in there that says you have up until the 6th day of the cycle in order to make use of this. Submit either this form to the counselor that has a reason that they want to do that, because it shouldn't be a simple, I want to drop this. But there needs to be logic there, and there needs to be a system that's
Maybe that would live
communicated.
in the handbook or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it lives in the guide. So
Right.
this language,
In
the,
the-
the
in the
program
program
planning
guide.
guide.
Okay.
So this language is, we've currently written the language, and it
Just
currently
publish
lives
it.
in the draft of the guide. So
Maybe
what
it
we need
can-
to do is get that into the program planning section of our website.
Maybe it can cross-reference into a handbook. Click here, and then it'll hyperlink to it to
My
make
handbook-
it easier for.
My
Yeah.
handbook revisions are coming.
I cannot wait. I'm ready for them.
I read the handbook from top to bottom, Dr. Russell can attest to that.
Yes.
If you're making changes, rock and roll, I'll be a reader.
Okay.
Okay, so at this point, we're, anything
Yeah,
else?
and other than what you see here, there are only some minor wording changes. We added language to forensic science, for example, that forensic science makes reference to crime and has blood in it, right? We made some obvious statements about zoology that you might have to dissect something. So we had some students drop for those reasons this year, and so we decided to be a little clearer. But these are the substantive changes of the guide. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Dr. Fuller. So with that, we're asking that this agenda item be moved to the December agenda.
Right on.
Okay.
I mean, is everybody okay with that? What do you think, Natalie?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, moving on. Mrs. Ranko?
That'll be you.
Thank you. Natalie Renko, Curriculum and Instruction Supervisor of Humanities. So to begin, before I get into what my perspectives is, I wanted to first talk about the need. So there is a need to identify a new resource for middle school English language arts. The current resource that we have right now, Collections by Houghton Mifflin, was purchased 10 years ago. It is not aligned with structured literacy practices and best practices that we know from science of reading. So we decided to, additionally, this resource is being archived at the end of the year and will no longer be supported. So, that there's an immediate need for a new resource for English language arts. In the spring, we put together a committee of middle school English language arts teachers, classroom teachers, as well as special education teachers, reading specialists, instructional coach, and a building admin from the middle level to review multiple core resources, including into literature, my perspectives, and wit and wisdom. We developed a rubric that included multiple criteria, such as quality of text, diversity of text, the ability to scaffold for our students and differentiate, as well as embedded explicit instruction in grammar and vocabulary and systematic instruction of literacy, progression of literacy skills. So using that rubric, the committee reviewed multiple times. We initially got it down from 3 resources to 2, and then had the vendors come back 2 more times before the teachers finally made a decision that their top choice is my perspectives. So my perspectives then, being the top choice, is a comprehensive English language arts program for middle school students. It combines reading, writing, speaking, and listening. There's a variety of genre provided in each unit, including fiction, informational text, poetry. So students are exposed multiple times. It's a spiraling curriculum where they're exposed multiple times throughout the year to different genre of text. There is a linear progression, a systematic progression of literacy skills. So it is aligned with best practices in structured literacy, as well as explicit instruction in vocabulary and grammar, multiple opportunities for writing. Each unit is a thematic unit that includes the multiple genres, all centered around one theme. And in the beginning of each unit, students are asked a question to share their perspective on a topic. And then as they read and explore that topic in more depth, they're given the opportunity to change their perspective, change their opinion in response to the literature, as well as in response to conversations with their peers. So that's, where the name comes from, my perspectives. It includes digital resources as well as print resources. There's also novels that come along with the My Perspectives unit that teachers will select. Right now, they haven't narrowed down exactly which novels they want to use, but we're looking at the ones that align with each of the themes. Okay. So again, some of the reasons why this resource was selected. Another reason is also that we feel like it will align cohesively with Into Reading, the elementary resource, which also provides that linear progression of literacy skills that seamlessly continue, that My Perspectives will then seamlessly continue. Students have the opportunity for more sophisticated instruction in vocabulary, grammar, writing, and as well as reading comprehension. My Perspectives, teachers felt that it was very engaging. There were many opportunities for student engagement, including collaborative projects that include multimedia, lots of discussion, and the texts are engaging themselves. The pilot will consist of, if approved, 10 out of the 12 middle school English language arts teachers. They were given an option if they were interested in piloting. 10 out of the 12 are interested in starting as soon as it's approved. The other 2 are interested in starting at some time in the near future. So I'll work with them, and they'll engage in the professional development to allow them to become more comfortable and ready to start the pilot. Savis, the company that produces My Perspectives, has established a professional learning plan for the pilot, where they would come out once a month in person to each of the middle schools. So they would come to East one day and then West the next day during the time in between the end of the student day and the end of the teacher day, for small group professional learning, not just in implementing the resources, but in also best practices that are aligned with structured literacy that are embedded within the resource. I think that might be it. Are there any questions about this pilot? Yes.
Quite a few.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course.
So I have a couple of questions with regard to implementation. So I
Okay.
understand that the one that we're using right now at the middle level is being archived.
Yes,
And that's, as of the end of this school year, it will no longer be our curriculum.
correct.
So I understand the pilot, meaning that once it's approved in December, it would be adopted for the second half of the year?
Yes,
Okay, but if this is the recommendation of administration and of the stakeholder teachers,
yes.
then I guess it's really not a pilot per se. Is that just vernacular?
So when you're saying it's not a pilot,
A
you mean-
pilot to me means we're trying it out on a very small scale, and then we may like it or choose something else.
no, sometimes we choose to do a pilot that is an entire department pilot, so that everyone gets to experience the same thing at the same time.
Right. So that would bring me to my next point of 10 out of 12 teachers. For the teachers and the students that are not willing to take part in the pilot, I'm a little concerned about their instruction and the equity associated with the content for those classes, for those sections of class. So in other words, like, are we going to be all in with My Perspectives and we'll try it out, or are we going to pilot it on a small scale? Because 10 out of 12 is not a teacher from East and a teacher from West, and let's see how it works. It's
Right.
You're touching a lot of kids, except for 2 teachers' sections worth of
Right.
ELA.
So the
Two
the-
teachers want the pilot.
Not
one,
want the pilot. Is that what you mean? Oh, not want the pilot, right?
one of them is close to retirement, and is struggling with adopting something new. So we're supporting her with that. Another has some home concerns and things going on with her health that she felt like it was not the right time to take this on.
So, okay. So the curriculum's not going away, just the resource is going away.
That is correct,
So
and,
what-
and that was going to be my point regarding the
Yeah.
equity. The curriculum stays the same
It's just
for
the
all
resource.
students this year, but the resource is
So that
would
leads to
be
my,
different.
So the two
Yeah.
teachers, one has the health, one's like, I'm like 7 days away from retirement. I don't want to do something new. What would be? I'm now struggling as a school board member to care about that. In a respectful way, because I care about. I'm here for the students, right? So what is their plan for the student base? There'll be no resource for the student. The curriculum's there. The resource is
Well,
going
they
away.
could-
Those
they
teachers will still be
still
teaching
have-
the current curriculum.
Yeah, yeah.
Still have collections.
For the rest of the year, that collections
Correct.
curriculum is here.
Yes.
I guess.
But that's strange that 80% would move to one, and the only reasons the other two aren't moving is not because they saw something in the program that they didn't like. It was,
circumstantial, which
I really have no interest in learning a new tool. And although I get it, I'm in the business of selling new tools. That's what I do. I sell someone from one product to another, and I know there's a problem with that. But when a company comes to me and says, "Hey, our product is going away," that's an easy sell because they have to have the product now. So I don't know how we can accept the fact that two teachers just don't want to do it because they don't want to do it.
And this is one of these areas where we really have to.
They don't have to.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is one of these areas that we have to take a look at because in many of our pilots, we give teachers choice about whether or not they're going to participate. And so that is something that I have some issues with as well, unless we're really intelligent about why people have choice and who's going to pick and choose that they do get to or don't get to participate. Right now, this is the case in this matter, and it's probably something we need to take a much closer look at going forward, because I don't disagree that this really sometimes should be an all-in situation so that we have parity, or that when we're choosing teachers, we are strategically saying we're going to have this number of teachers in these grades so that we have a good sampling of what we're doing.
So that had to do with the resource piece of it. So that was my first question.
Okay.
The second part was resource aside, curriculum-wise, through observational experience of middle school, I have been wondering as far as where we are in terms of evaluating the rigor of ELA and the purpose of ELA at the middle level and how it prepares our students to get to the high school and actually be high achievers across the board. Because as I have experienced it, and I can't speak to one resource versus the other resource, but from the curriculum standpoint, I don't know will this new resource solve some of those problems that have been identified?
So, good instruction lies within the teacher, not necessarily the resource. So we are providing professional learning for our middle school teachers. In October, the one in service day in October, the entire middle school English department received training from the MCIU regarding best practices in structured literacy specific to middle school. So that work is now continuing through our instructional coach as well as myself, doing classroom observations and having conversations with teachers regarding rigor and best instructional practice. So that's the first answer. The second answer is that the resource can support the teacher in those efforts. And collections did not necessarily do that. It's a very dry, basic resource that provides one text at one level of difficulty that doesn't necessarily lend itself to differentiated instruction and scaffolding for our students who might need remediation, as well as enrichment for our students who need that support.
Right.
Where My Perspectives does offer that. So there is one...
More dynamic overall.
It is more dynamic.
Right.
There is one basic text that is on grade level that all students will read and be exposed to. In addition to that, there's other texts within a unit that provide scaffolding for students who need that, that provide choice for students, as well as more advanced text that is still related to that theme, that will expose our students who are ready for that.
In a more seamless way. I just felt like there was a lot of redundancy, and in the experience with ELA on 6, 7, 8, and I just feel pretty strongly that it didn't in any way prepare for high school level, and certainly not AP level
I think during the
courses.
upcoming curriculum revision process, we do need to take a look at that vertical alignment. And one plan is to bring teachers, representatives from K through 12 together to look at that vertical alignment and make sure that the skills progression makes sense
Well,
systematically.
I
from-
appreciated that you mentioned that about elementary school resource and that this kind of is the next step. So that was
Yes.
really huge. And then in thinking about our conversation from last month with the remediation, the intervention
Yes. From the
components
spring.
from the
Yes.
correct. So I was thinking about that as you were talking about this and all of that. So if there are some reluctant adopters for various reasons, because we all are individual and human,
Yes.
and I appreciate the pain points of adopting a new resource. If there is something that the department and administration can do to either offer a co-teaching opportunity for those teachers in this pilot, or some additional coaching or training, I think that to me would be a better angle than just allowing an opt-out of something that is going to be adopted for the betterment of our ELA department
And
at the middle
I
level.
don't disagree with that. And as Savas comes in and provides professional learning each month, those teachers who are not currently opting into the pilot will still be part of that professional learning.
So I guess what I'm saying is that I don't know that it's acceptable that we have two sections of ELA with students that are not part of this pilot.
It's not, I wish it was two sections. It's
No, I
not.
mean two.
It's two teachers worth, so
No,
it may
two,
not be.
so
I
two
wish it
teachers,
was- yeah.
two teachers worth of sections.
I wish this was a pilot. This is not a pilot. This is 8 out of 10.
That's my point.
And so I want to get back to it because I just want to clarify something. What exactly are you asking the board for? Because I'm really confused now because 8 out of 10 is not a pilot. And the resource is going away. Is that what we're saying? So let's say this isn't, like, go back one slide. Please. Let's say we don't have my perspectives. When does the current tool go away?
At the end of this school year.
At the end of the school year, the tool goes away, and we need another tool because we don't want to redo our contract. Correct? With the
Being archived and not even available.
correct. So
Yes.
there's no, that tool's gone.
Yes.
So come July 3rd, there's a new tool that we must have.
Correct.
And we're going to pilot this My Perspective resource for 6th to 8th grade starting when?
Upon approval.
So upon approval, we would start doing it in December. And that means that, for instance, if I was the teacher that was piloting this program, I'm going to be teaching my course now differently than the teacher who's still using the other program, correct?
Still following the same curriculum, but with a different resource.
And that means the students are getting a different resource.
Correct.
Correct. So unless we want to actually pilot this, which would be a small set subsample, right? But we're
Yes.
not asking for a small. We're asking for 8 out of 10. So to me, that I'm worried about those 20% of students who aren't getting this. But more importantly, I'm worried now for the reasoning of why. If we're going to do it, we should do it at a small scale, and we should be piloting a secondary program because that's. Like this, to me, there's no course analysis because we're looking at this program and nothing else. What if we don't like this? What's the next step for next year?
She just explained that they did a.
We looked at
They
Wit
looked at
Wisdom,
multiples.
we
This
looked
was
at
the recommended.
Into Literature.
This was the recommended
We
teachers
resource.
looked at,
had-
we didn't pilot.
Well,
Two
teachers,
totally different things, right?
teachers
Right?
did have those materials in the spring.
But they didn't do it with students.
But they've chosen that
They-
this is
they
the one
did-
that is the best based on their expertise.
Yeah, I know, I'm getting there. So we didn't pilot any other programs. This is the one that 8 out of 10 teachers like. It's like a infomercial at 2:00 in the morning.
The entire committee recommended this. So even the teachers who didn't opt into the pilot
Yeah.
recommended this resource.
But we're moving forward with 80% of our student body, not a pilot. And so if in implementation, they realize this is probably not the best program, now that we've implemented it, what would be the next step? A pilot in a normal sense of the matter would be, we're going to test My Perspective with one room, and we're going to test another tool that we didn't think we were going to like in another room. We're all in agreement that My Perspective is the best, but we're going to pilot them in action to see. I like Toyota. Rob likes Nissan. They're both really good cars. They both have the same specs. I think Toyota is a little bit better than Nissan. We'll go pilot those cars out and come to a decision. Hey, you're right, Nissan is the best. Here, we're just driving one thing, but just for 80% of the student body. And so what happens to that leftover? So you're going to have 6 months, or excuse me, December to June of the vast super majority of students putting through this. How do we help those other 20% now? And what happens if now in the working sense, we come away going, this is not what we thought it was. Everything's great when you look at it and the salesperson is presenting it to you, and then you go to implement the tool and you're like, this is not what they sold. This is not what they said was going to be. But we're not looking at anything else yet. So what happens in that perspective?
So we did look at Wit and Wisdom and interliterature starting in March this year. Teachers did have the materials in front of them. They had access to the online materials as well. So teachers did not necessarily pilot. However, they did, test out some of the lessons. They were looking at the materials. They were looking at the alignment to standards and best practices. So they've had these materials in their hands since March for all of the resources. We did a thorough review. So the vendors were in not just once or twice, but multiple times. They came in the summer. We had teachers that volunteered to come in during the summer.
Yeah.
To review the materials, spent like an entire day looking and diving into the materials before choosing this. So we decided as a committee not to move forward with a
Sure.
comparative pilot, which is when you do have multiple resources that you're moving forward with to compare.
Yeah.
But rather just a pilot before we make a financial commitment
Sure.
as an
I get that.
assurance, and for teachers to get comfortable with the resources and get the professional learning before beginning this
Let me
the
take
school
another
year.
approach at the question.
Okay.
Let's assume my child's in 7th grade at East. And I talk to my friends at West, and their students are all of a sudden seeing this great My Perspective resource tool. They're getting great engagement. There's critical thinking. And as I go out to dinner with my friends, I go to a restaurant and we're talking about it, and it's great. And I find out, well, everyone I talk to is getting this great new tool. My kid's not getting it. And then I find out, oh, my kid's one of the 20%. How do we respond to that parent?
So
If I can,
Yeah, go
jump
ahead.
in here. And Mr. Sarah, I understand that, your perspective on this. Those children, as you're asking about right now, they wouldn't be at a deficit because they're getting exactly what has been designed instructionally. The current curriculum is a board-approved, the curriculum is working well. We're moving away from it because,
Dry.
well, but it's still doing what we needed to do.
Yeah, I know.
So we're moving forward from it at this point. It may be dry. It may not be necessarily what we have liked to, it's been in place for 10 years, right? So we've gotten to that spot where we know we would have been replacing regardless. We know we have a more immediate need to replace now because, of course, that curriculum is coming to an end. Part of the way that, we have viewed pilots, I don't disagree that we may need to look at what we call pilot and our timing around this. I think there's a history of how things have been adopted that we need to take a look at so that our timing is better. In this case, our timing doesn't work out the way we'd want it to, and we are really using the pilot as verification, not necessarily as trying out multiple things simultaneously, which, as you were describing, if we were doing a comparative pilot, as Natalie said, we would have done or should have done. So as we move forward, Mr. Handerhan, he's going to talk about Twig in a minute, and we're going to have a different perspective and a different timing on how those things are working. But you're right. In this case, having that 80% do one thing may not look like a pilot, but it often is a pilot in many places that we're trying out the thing, and we want to get as many people to try it out as possible so that we can talk about it intelligently.
Can we just
before
make it
get
100%?
Can we make it 100%? I can't commit to that at this, but that's a longer discussion we'd have to have around why or why not we would have to include those additional teachers. I guess one of the reasons may be because we have already given teachers choice, and that is a practice. And so part of that practice we'd probably still want to be able to honor, but it's not something we can't have a conversation around. I just can't commit to saying that that's what we would do right now.
But there's nothing in their contract that would give the teacher the right to say, I'm not going to use this resource that the school's mandating, right? The school board. So you're telling me if we amend this to make it 10 out of 10, that we can't make that happen at the next school board meeting?
Okay, I guess I'm trying. I think I'm coming to it maybe in a more diplomatic
I know.
approach.
I lack that. I know.
Well, no. I mean, I think that we can come. I think that we're on the same page in understanding that we need to adopt a new resource.
Yeah.
I respect the fact that this is the one that was chosen. What I had mentioned was, is there a way to bring along late adopters or reluctant adopters to help maybe put in the tell me the word. I'm all worked up. The coach. What's the word?
Instructional coach?
Instructional coach in those rooms, perhaps provide them a little bit more resource, a little bit more hand-holding. There's no need to finger point 2 out of 12 ELA teachers at the middle level. All of their reasoning is sound. It just, with regard to adoption of something that's going to be happening in August universally, how do we bring the other two along? And that we can just stick a pin in it. We don't have to debate it here. That can be an internal administrative leadership conversation that the board doesn't need to be a part of. But I think that you're hearing some of the concern around the fact that it would be not all, it would just be some. So diplomatically, maybe we can get some adoption universally with some extra assistance.
Yeah. I should say that the 2 teachers who said that they weren't interested in piloting immediately did say that they would pilot this year. So
We should have led with that, Natalie.
right,
Should have led with that.
Right,
But that's okay. I
right.
think we can move.
but moving closer to
Okay.
after PSSA's springtime,
So
end
then-
of the year, last
So
quarter.
then maybe
Yes.
we'll just take another stab at the presentation of the ask for December.
I think Bob has something to say.
Okay.
Yeah, besides, yeah, that would have been good to know beforehand.
Yes.
No,
I-
the truth is, don't sugarcoat it. Tell us the truth.
Well,
That's
okay.
what our job on the board is.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you were honest what they said, and
Yeah.
and now they're going to hear from the board that I find that to be highly unacceptable.
Yeah, I think I agree with you in a lot of your perspective on this. Are we going to have a bunch of our middle school students saying, gee, which class am I in? The one that's in this percentage or not? It'll be kind of easy for them to figure out if they've listened to this conversation tonight.
I really hope they're not.
Yeah, I know.
Well,
but
I think that's my concern, which is why I'd like to dial
yeah,
down.
we need to figure
where we
out
are
a way
in the
where we
conversation
can
right
get
now.
everybody
Wait, your
on
concern is
board.
that the student, a 6th grader, is watching this and might see that we're debating that.
I don't think that we should debate the merit or the reasoning of teachers and what they're doing in terms of their job and their professionalism at this committee meeting. No, I don't think that's appropriate.
Well, it was brought up, and it's a
I
public
understand,
hearing.
and so that's why that's what we talked about it. So we don't need to keep beating the horse over it. I think it's established, and we know the view on the matter. I don't disagree with you, by the way. So that's why I was asking. You don't have to make a face, Jason. I think that pointing fingers at teachers is not the right thing to do in an education
I'm not pointing the
committee
finger at the teacher. This was presented that it should have been presented as 10 out of 10. It's not at the teacher, and that's
Okay.
the purpose of these meetings, and they just happen to be recorded and in public.
Okay. So moving along, I guess my concern and some of the other questions that I had with regards to the resource are the differentiation and how it will be implemented to help correct some of that full inclusion model that we have and we're very proud of, but also allows for the amount of rigor that's really required for well-being, for individual well-being of a student. Because I know that we track for math, and I just feel pretty strongly that we should also track for ELA, and I know that that's a bigger conversation, but knowing that this resource will allow for differentiation is helpful, but to me, it has to do, to your point about it's only as good as the delivery, how that's actually going to be implemented to set students up for success as they get into the high school. So that was more of a comment than I need you to give me an answer, but that's what's on my mind with regard to ELA at the middle level and a new resource.
Thank you for your input in this. So our request is that we'd be able to move this to the December agenda for approval of the pilot.
So what I heard tonight was that we would be willing to entertain approval of the pilot with 100% buy-in at the middle level for all grades and all teachers. Is that accurate? Does that reflect the conversation properly?
Yes, I think that I would agree with that.
Okay.
And I don't,
You want to keep going on? Go ahead.
yeah, and one last point, I agree that it's not our place to be telling the teachers individually or administration and how to go about implementing this. I do think it is fair that they know what our thoughts are on this and that we would like to see it universally adopted there. I don't think that's an unfair point at all, and I think Mr. Saylor definitely made that point, and I tend to agree with him because I look at my own experience in, working and in other places there, and sometimes you have to do what you have to do, and I think that's fair enough. And I think this resource could actually is a very good one, and I think there's going to be a positive outlook and a positive outcome for our students. So I have no issue with this coming up in December, with the caveat that you added.
Okay, so point taken. Dr. Sadler, do you have something to add?
If I hear you correctly, you're saying that this can get on the agenda for December only if all of the teachers are implementing the My Perspectives.
So I'm not offering a directive. I was just summing up what I
Okay,
heard our
okay.
conversation
Is
reflect.
that where you are with that, Mr. Saylor?
I would only vote, I can only tell you what I would vote for. I can't tell you what's going to go on the agenda. I would only vote for it if it was all buy-in.
Okay. Is that what you're saying also, Mr. Lincoln? Yes. Okay. I just wanted to be clear on that. Thank you, Ms. White.
Do you have, Dr. Sadler, an opinion about adoption of curriculum and?
I honestly, I don't have a problem with two of the teachers deciding to continue the current curriculum resource that's in place right now. I don't have a problem with 10 teachers deciding that they want to use or implement the new curriculum resource that we may adopt for the rest of the school year. I personally don't have a problem with that because I think, I don't know if it was
Natalie?
last name.
Renko.
Ms. Branco made the point that it's all about the instruction.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter. You can have a new resource that's full of rigor and you can differentiate. But if the teacher isn't teaching
Right.
and utilizing differentiation, all that in their instruction, it doesn't even matter what resource they use. So I think she made the valid point that instruction that's done is the most important part.
Right.
What resource you have is your resource, but as a teacher, sometimes you supplement that resource if you have to. That's what good teachers do. So I personally don't have a problem with 2 deciding to continue to use collections and then 10 wanting to use the new curriculum resource.
Okay, I appreciate that. So I just wanted to make sure that that's where we were in terms of the committee's feedback. And I brought my comments up about the overall intention in the application of the curriculum. I agree completely that it doesn't matter.
I get what you're saying, Mr. Saylor. I totally do. I get that. But there's a lens that I have as a past educator, as a former teacher, that lens tends to give me a different outlook and perspective on something like this because I've experienced that where I may have, I can't remember, it's been so long, but I may have chosen to pilot something and someone else may have chosen not to pilot. But if you're a good teacher, you're a good teacher. It doesn't matter what resource you have, you can teach, right? Yeah. So I think that's the caveat for me. If you're a good teacher, it doesn't matter what resource you're using, you're going to teach your brains out and those kids are going to learn and are going to excel.
I agree with you 100% with that perspective. That's just not what I was told.
That's not what I was
Told.
You were told something different?
Yeah, we were just told I'm sick and old. Those are the 2 reasons.
Stop it.
So again, with regard to the way that it comes to the board in December, I think if we could get just a very clear picture about how it will be implemented upon approval, that would be very, very helpful. All right, thank you, Ms. Franco. Thank you very, very much. let's talk about it.
Grief-sensitive schools. That's perfect. Perfect segue. So our next topic is a presentation that we had on Professional Development Day on grief-sensitive schools. So this grief-sensitive schools initiative, I think the title, says quite well what it is. Patty Colucci was one of our social workers. She had led this professional development. She is working with the New York Life Foundation and brought in a team in order to present this to our staff. There was an overwhelmingly positive response to this presentation. We had over 80 staff members, and you'll see that on a later slide, who signed up to attend this this session. We see there the objectives: enhanced understanding of knowledge, looking at what death means and how children and others actually, when they got into those discussions, how they cope with grief inside the school setting, how we can be more supportive, and we can make sure that we have the tools for compassion and effective support, and then how to create that environment, creating that environment that supports when grief occurs is an extremely important thing to do as an entire community. It was fantastic that through this process, if a school actually sent a team of teachers, then that school could be certified as a grief-sensitive school, and there would be funding available for those schools to continue on providing additional training and getting resources around this work.
That's cool. Very cool.
So this is just an update on that. So what Ms. Colucci has done, she's to be commended for bringing this to the district. The foundation also supported this work, so the foundation provided a mini grant in order to provide materials for the professional development. And then we will be able to, now that we have the schools, all 7 schools who actually bought 5 people, so all 7 of those schools will receive that $500 grant. We're in the process of completing that paperwork so that we have everything to present to the board to accept those grants.
And what does the $500 cover? I'm sorry, did I?
The $500 for the school just to continue on
Okay, gotcha.
from the learning that they have in order to purchase whatever they need to in order to support being a grief-sensitive school.
Awesome. That would be a wonderful thing to feature in one of our updates to the community. I think it's really a nice, positive message.
Very well.
Yeah,
Yes.
and useful to them as well, actually, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah, very nice.
Yep. So in this case, there's no action immediately necessary because we don't have the grant funding, but when that grant funding is received, then we'll bring this back to the board to accept the funding.
Cool.
And our last item, going in the opposite direction, looking at pilots again, with Mr. Handerhan and his
Oh, I know
introduction
that
to the
Mr.
board.
Handerhan can't wait. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Handerhan.
Giving us an update on
Lay it all out
Twig
there for us.
Science.
Twig since the beginning of the school year. There are new steel standards coming out for science, and so they chose a resource to pilot that is aligned with those new standards coming out. Here are just some of the feedback that I received from them on the 5th when we met as a team during our Act 80 day. So the main advantage that they were saying with Twig is that just engaging simulations. So it's very computer-based, has online simulations that the students and the teachers really like. However, the challenge with that is there are frequent technology issues that are associated with it, and the responsiveness from the Twig IT department has not been the greatest. That's the feedback that I got. The other major thing is just the time management issues, but that is more just related to getting familiar with a new resource. Like the pacing's a little bit different, they discovered, and so just coming to terms with that and adjusting their lessons based upon the pacing of the new resource has been, I don't want to say it's been a little bit of a challenge, but something that they're working through and could be expected with any new resource pilot.
What are the technology problems?
One of the biggest technology problems is that as the teachers are accessing different parts of the curriculum, firewalls will come up because we have to give open access to our security, to our entire network. And that's something that is just as unacceptable. This is a product that is actually from the UK. Yes, from the UK. And so even though it is a quote unquote global product, being able to open up our entire network in order to get full access to the curriculum has been challenging.
Are there other school districts in Pennsylvania that have Twig?
I'm not sure about the entire state of Pennsylvania. I did reach out to Montgomery County, though, and did not receive any feedback from any school districts that are utilizing Twig.
So do we receive feedback that they don't have it, or they just
don't.
didn't answer at
Yeah,
all?
they're
Oh,
not.
they-
Yeah.
Okay. Is Karthik think there's a workaround for this, or?
He does not at this point. So he's been working with the company. He's tried over and over again. We can't download the materials. We actually have to access it live.
So, there is no recommendation at this point, as
No.
based on the slide.
Yeah,
So
that's what
in
I'm getting
December,
back
I
to.
mean, that's now, pretty much. Is there something in the wings that you're looking to explore after that? Okay.
So we're revisiting some of the vendors that they looked at earlier, specifically Kessler Science, Style, and also Open Syed is a major one that a lot of districts do utilize.
The last one you just
Yes.
mentioned?
Mhm.
Okay. And then, I don't know, does it matter at all which districts utilize which? Or do we look at that and weigh that based on their results?
You mean for the other materials? Yeah. So Kevin, I wasn't involved in the
No,
selection
and I
process
know that
previous
you
to
weren't either, so I just am wondering, kind of, we can,
I mean,
Okay.
Open Syed is the one that I'm most familiar with, and I mean, Open Syed is a very well respected, curriculum that a lot of people use. I'm not sure why it didn't bubble up to be one of our choices earlier,
okay.
but I would definitely think that of those, that's the one that I actually know, and I know how well supported it is and how well written it is.
Are you able to speak to that, Dr. Russell, about what Mrs. O'Sullivan's reasoning was? No.
I can't speak to it, I'm sorry. We can certainly follow up, but I'm not sure of the reasoning. I'd have to go back.
I'm sure that there was a good one.
Yes.
I'm wondering if, in December, if we could,
Yeah.
seems like December's the time. Okay.
Is there a way to look at the contract for Twig and see if any of their IT issues were not stated in what they said would be in procurement? I would find it hard to believe that we went forward with a pilot program that doesn't work with our IT system. And a lot of times with these pilot programs, they give you all the things that are there.
Yeah.
So something to look at.
You know, it's not that it doesn't work necessarily. It does require a greater level of access to get to some of the resources that Karthik is uncomfortable with. Because
So it's us internally being
yeah,
uncomfortable.
it's security. It's really security because of the way they force you to get to some of what they offer. It's open access. It's too open. It's too open for in the view of our chief information officer.
Not something we could have known prior, though? Or is it?
We didn't. Apparently, we
Yeah.
didn't. Yeah.
And it's because it's all web-based. It's not, there's no hard material, I guess.
I don't know if there's no print material. I'm not sure if you know that, Mr. Handerham, but I know that a good portion of it is available online
Mm-hmm.
and accessible that way. It's just a path that we're not comfortable going down.
Yeah.
I believe
because
they
of
have
the potential
consumable
risk.
notebooks,
Oh,
from what I
okay.
understand. Yeah.
Like for
I can
like
double-check that.
labs
Yeah,
or?
I believe
yeah,
so.
Okay, gotcha. Workbooks of some sort, yeah, got it.
How quickly can we get, I know that's what I think Mrs. White just asked, how quickly can we get a new pilot in?
I've already scheduled meetings with the vendors to discuss those things. Just haven't established like a firm date on when that would start, but it's something I would bring to the CNI team soon.
And this subscription, I'm assuming the pilot's ending in December because of the
Yes.
subscription will be terminated in
Yes.
December,
Mhm.
okay. You need to have a mic on, honey.
I'm sorry. This wasn't a free pilot. Did we have to put money out for this pilot, or was it free?
Believe we did. I have to go back and look
Okay.
at that. But I'm
Well,
not- yeah.
that's a good question. We paid for the professional development, the professional learning. We did not pay for anything else.
Okay.
And that was in a slide earlier. I believe the board approved that recently.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that item was for information only, and we'll come back with what the next steps will be for this. And with that, that ends the agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell.